You know how some days just start normal? Coffee, checking emails, just another Tuesday? Well, mine took a turn. A really wild one, actually. My soon-to-be ex-wife's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, just showed up at my office, right there, served me a file for her $1.2 million case. Can you believe it? I felt this weird calm though, because I remembered the envelope I had, with everything inside. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. My name is Alara, by the way, and I work in graphic design, a pretty calm job usually, just me, my computer, and a whole lot of creative ideas, you know? My office is in this neat building, right downtown, and most days are filled with client calls, mock-ups, and the gentle hum of the air conditioning, a familiar rhythm I always liked, actually. 4 years, my life with David, my husband, had settled into a similar sort of rhythm, comfortable, predictable even, or so I thought anyway. We met through friends, a really sweet story back then, didn't it? He was a software engineer, sharp and funny, and we just clicked, right from the start, like two puzzle pieces finding their spot. Our apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom, had this big window overlooking the park, and I loved watching the seasons change from there, just thinking about everything. We used to spend weekends exploring little cafes, planning imaginary trips we'd take one day, laughing until our sides hurt about silly things, you know, the kind of moments that make up a real life together, full of warmth and shared dreams. But then slowly, things began to shift, like a quiet current pulling you away without you even noticing at first, you see. David started working longer hours, always glued to his phone, and our conversations became shorter, more about schedules than shared jokes, which felt really strange. He'd say, "Just busy, Alara, big project, okay?" And I'd try to understand, telling myself it was just a phase, you know? Our imaginary trips faded into silence, and the park view often saw me alone, wondering where my funny, sharp David had gone, what was really happening to us. I tried to talk to him, honestly, I did, asking, "Is everything all right, David? You seem distant," but he'd just brush it off, "Nothing to worry about, Alara, really," with that tight smile he developed, the one that never quite reached his eyes, you know, it was just chilling. One evening, I remember it so clearly, I found a burner phone hidden in his old gym bag, tucked away deep inside, and a weird feeling, cold and heavy, settled in my stomach right then like a stone. I didn't open it, didn't even touch it, just put it back exactly where I found it, pretending I hadn't seen anything at all, you know, my hand shaking a little, I admit. The thought of confronting him, of shattering whatever fragile piece we had left, just felt too big, too scary for me to handle then. I told myself it was probably nothing, just a work thing, a secret project, you know, but the tiny seed of doubt had been planted, slowly growing in my mind like a weed. Then last Tuesday, the day started out so normal, just like any other truly. I was in my cubicle, focused on a new logo design, sipping my lukewarm coffee, totally engrossed, you know, when my manager, Mr. Harrison, walked over, looking kind of worried, a bit pale, actually. "Alara," he said, his voice softer than usual, "there's someone here to see you." In the reception area it looks official, and he gave me this really sympathetic look, like he already knew something bad was about to happen. My stomach immediately dropped, just a tiny bit, because official almost never means anything good, right? My mind immediately went to David, wondering if something had happened, a bad accident maybe, my heart just sinking. I pushed my chair back slowly, my hands feeling a bit clammy, and walked towards the reception area, my steps feeling heavy, like I was walking through mud, you know. There, standing by the glossy front desk, was this tall, impeccably dressed man in a dark suit, holding a slim leather briefcase, looking very serious indeed, his eyes scanning the room, almost calculating, I thought. He had a stern face, sharp features, like a character from a movie, totally unlike anyone I'd ever seen in our office before, I promise you. "Alara Vance?" he asked, his voice formal, deep, like he was speaking from a script, not a friendly conversation at all, you know. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and said, "Yes, that's me," my voice coming out a little weaker than I'd intended, almost a whisper actually. He didn't smile, didn't offer a handshake, just reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope, sealed tightly, looking very important, you know. "I'm Mr. Peterson," he stated, his eyes fixed on mine, "legal counsel for David Vance." My world seemed to tilt right then, honestly, just like that. Mr. Peterson, David's lawyer? Here? At my job? My mind was trying to process it, but it felt like a glitch in the matrix, totally unreal, you know. He handed me the envelope, and it felt heavy, cold against my fingers, like it held all the bad news in the world, just waiting to burst open. "These are divorce papers, Alara," he said, his voice flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a manual, along with a civil suit for breach of marital contract and financial damages totaling $1.2 million. $1.2 million. Can you even believe it? The words hung in the air, heavy, echoing in my ears, making my head spin. I just stood there, clutching the envelope, my knuckles turning white, feeling like all the air had been sucked out of the room, you know. My jaw probably hung open, because I could feel the cold shock spread through me, like ice water, honestly. This wasn't just David asking for a divorce, which would have been bad enough, right? This was an attack, a full-blown assault on my life, right there in the middle of my workplace, for everyone to see, a complete public humiliation, totally planned, I bet. I could feel the stares, even though I tried not to look. The receptionist, a few colleagues walking by, their eyes curious, maybe a little pitying, I couldn't tell, you know. My face felt hot, flushing with embarrassment, but beneath it, a tiny flicker of something else sparked to life, something sharp and cold, like a steel blade, you know, totally unexpected. I looked at Mr. Peterson, really looked at him, and then I saw it, this tiny, almost invisible smirk at the corner of his mouth, a flicker of triumph, like he just won something, and it boiled my blood, honestly. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady, even though my hands were shaking so much, I almost dropped the envelope. I really surprised myself, actually. "I'll review these documents," I told him, just as calmly as I could, trying to meet his gaze, trying to hide the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a professional dismissive gesture, and then turned, clicked his briefcase shut, and walked out, leaving me standing there, holding this massive, life-altering bombshell in my hands, totally bewildered, you know. My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it, making it hard to breathe, honestly, a real weight pressing down on me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to just curl up and disappear from that reception area, away from all the curious eyes and the whispered comments I could almost hear, you know, but I couldn't. I couldn't let them see me break. I just couldn't. Instead, a strange quiet calm settled over me, a feeling of absolute clarity, you see. It was like the world had gone from blurry to super sharp in an instant, and all the little doubts, the hints, the burner phone, David's distant look, his tight smile, everything clicked into place, making perfect sense, like a dark puzzle finally solved. This wasn't about our marriage anymore, not really, was it? This was about something else entirely, something much bigger, and much uglier too. I knew right then, deep in my gut, that David wasn't just leaving me, he was trying to ruin me, trying to take everything, to completely wipe me out, with this crazy $1.2 million demand, you know, for what? For just being married to him? It felt so unfair, so incredibly cruel, so much like a punch to the gut. I walked back to my desk slowly, the envelope feeling heavier with each step, and sat down, my mind racing now, not with fear, but with a cold, determined resolve, a feeling I hadn't felt in years. I knew what I had to do. I had to fight back. That manila envelope just sat on my desk, a huge, silent monument to the end of my life as I knew it, you know, a constant reminder of the war that had just been declared on me. I didn't open it right away, couldn't bring myself to, actually, not while everyone else was still around, curious and watchful, you see. I just pretended to work, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, but my mind was a million miles away, replaying Mr. Peterson's face, David's smugness, the ridiculous sum of money, $1.2 million, it was just insane. Later that evening, safe in the quiet of our now my apartment, I finally tore open the seal, my hands shaking a little, and spread the papers across the dining table, feeling like I was unfolding a map to some terrible, unfamiliar country. The legal jargon was dense, intimidating, filled with words like allegations, negligence, damages, all pointing to me, painting me as some kind of villain, you know. They claimed I had mishandled joint finances, that I had been unsupportive of David's career, that I had even, get this, emotionally manipulated him, which was just utterly insane, a complete fabrication, honestly. I almost laughed out loud, a harsh, bitter sound, at the sheer audacity of it all, the complete rewrite of our history, like none of our good times had ever even existed, you know? David, my husband, the man I loved, was painting me as a gold digger, a manipulator, someone who deserved nothing, and it cut me to the bone, honestly. But as I read through the accusations, line by excruciating line, the shock slowly began to give way to something else, something sharper, something more like a quiet anger, a burning ember deep inside me. He thought he could humiliate me, corner me, take everything I had, just like that? Oh no, not this time, not anymore. He had clearly underestimated me, hadn't he? He thought I was weak, defenseless, just some naive little wife, but he was wrong, so incredibly wrong, because I remembered something then, something important. I remembered that burner phone tucked away in his gym bag, which had seemed like a small, unsettling detail at the time, but now it felt like a tiny key, unlocking a bigger, darker picture of David's life, a whole secret life he had been living, right under my nose, you know. And I knew deep down, that wasn't the only secret he had, not by a long shot. The next morning, I called my best friend, Maya, who always knew how to make me laugh, even when things felt impossible, you know. Maya, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. I need your help. Something big just happened. And then I told her everything, the lawyer, the papers, the ridiculous $1.2 million, all of it, just pouring out in a rush of words, my voice cracking a little. She listened, patiently, quietly, not interrupting once, which I really appreciated. Elara, she finally said, her voice firm, that jerk, that absolute snake. We're going to fight this, you hear me? We'll find you the best lawyer, okay? We'll make him regret this, you just wait and see. Her words were a lifeline, a surge of strength when I felt like I was drowning, you know. I found a lawyer through a friend, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, known for being incredibly sharp and fair, not some cutthroat shark, but someone who really cared, which was important to me, honestly. Sarah had this calm, reassuring demeanor, but her eyes held a fierce intelligence, like she saw right through all the legal smoke and mirrors, straight to the truth, you know. During our first meeting, I told her about David's escalating distance, the hidden phone, my growing suspicions, everything, holding back nothing, even the parts that made me feel foolish. Sarah listened intently, taking notes, asking precise questions, piecing together the timeline of our crumbling marriage, you see. This $1.2 million claim is aggressive, Elara, she said, her voice steady, especially given your joint assets and your income. It sounds like he's trying to scare you into a quick, unfavorable settlement, to completely destroy your finances, and that made so much sense, it just clicked for me. Do you have any actual evidence of his extracurricular activities? She asked, looking directly at me, her gaze piercing. Anything concrete, beyond just suspicion? I hesitated then, just for a moment, because I did have something, or at least, I knew where to look for it. I think so, Sarah, I admitted slowly. I have a lead, something he's been very careful to hide, and I told her about David's secret trips, his business conferences that always seemed to coincide with expensive gifts he'd bring back for himself, things that didn't quite add up, you know, the way he'd hide his phone, the way he'd suddenly become unavailable, all those little things. Sarah's eyes widened just a fraction, a small but significant shift, as if she understood immediately. She totally got it. That could be very useful, Elara, she said, a hint of something like hope in her voice, very useful indeed. Over the next few weeks, the legal process ground on, a slow, draining battle of paperwork and carefully worded emails, always through Sarah, of course. David's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, was relentless, sending discovery requests, demanding financial records, piling on the pressure, just as Sarah had predicted, always trying to overwhelm me, you know. Each document felt like another jab, another attempt to make me feel small and powerless, but I refused to give in, I just wouldn't. I spent my evenings meticulously going through old bank statements, credit card bills, travel documents, anything I could find, searching for patterns, for anomalies, for anything that didn't quite fit, like a detective, honestly. I remembered David had mentioned investing in some obscure offshore company, for tax benefits, he'd said, dismissively, but now it felt like a red flag, waving wildly in my face. I dug deeper, looking for company names, transfer dates, anything linked to that conversation, and sure enough, there it was, hidden among stacks of old papers in his study, a cryptic statement for an account in a foreign bank, under a slightly different name, a tiny detail I almost missed, you know. It listed significant, regular transfers, far more than he could explain with his regular salary, and my gut told me right then that this was it, this was a big piece of the puzzle. This wasn't just about cheating, was it? This was about money, about hidden money, money he was trying to hide from our joint assets, money he probably wanted to keep from me, and that just infuriated me more. I didn't tell Sarah everything about what I found immediately, not yet anyway, because I wanted to be absolutely sure, you see. I wanted to verify every single detail, to build an airtight case, something undeniable. I quietly engaged a private investigator, someone recommended by a colleague, a discreet, thorough woman named Evelyn, who specialized in financial discrepancies and asset tracking, and she really knew her stuff, I could tell. Evelyn worked silently, efficiently, confirming my suspicions, uncovering more shell companies, more hidden accounts, a whole web of deceit that made my head spin, honestly. It turned out David had been systematically siphoning funds from his business, hiding assets, and diverting money into these secret accounts for years, probably with the help of his business conferences, which were anything but, It wasn't just cheating, it was fraud, a massive, calculated betrayal, and my blood ran cold with the realization of how deeply I had been deceived, how completely he had played me for a fool. The full extent of his deception was breathtaking, absolutely staggering, and it just made me sick to my stomach. This was the true reason for the $1.2 million lawsuit, wasn't it? He wanted to accuse me of financial mismanagement to cover his own tracks, to deflect attention from his own crimes, to leave me with nothing while he walked away with everything, a truly evil plan, honestly. By the time Evelyn delivered her final report, thick with documents, transaction histories, and international banking details, I felt a strange mix of emotions, profound sadness for the marriage that had been a lie, burning anger at David's betrayal, but also a deep sense of vindication, a quiet triumph. I carefully compiled everything into a single thick manila envelope, exactly like the one Mr. Peterson had handed me, but this one was different, full of truth, full of justice, you see. I sealed it tightly, feeling the weight of it in my hands, a silent promise, a secret weapon. The final court hearing was approaching fast, the date looming like a storm cloud, and David's side was still pushing hard, full of confidence, totally unaware of the thunder I was about to unleash, totally unaware of what I held in my hands, the real power, the real truth. They thought they had me cornered, believed I was defeated, that their $1.2 million claim was a done deal, But they had no idea, absolutely no idea, what was coming their way, what I had quietly placed into that envelope, the truth that was about to wipe out their whole case completely. My stomach clenched with a mix of nerves and exhilaration, a fierce resolve burning bright inside me, ready for the final confrontation. The morning of the court hearing arrived like a heavy gray shroud, wrapping the city in a cold, silent embrace, and I felt a strange mix of dread and absolute certainty, a calm before the storm exactly. I woke up early, before the sun even thought about rising, and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, not seeing Alara, the graphic designer, not seeing Alara, the heartbroken wife, but seeing Alara, the warrior, ready for battle, ready to fight for what was right. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple, professional suit, nothing flashy, just projecting quiet strength, which was exactly what I needed that day, honestly. My hands, surprisingly, were steady as I packed my bag, placing the meticulously prepared envelope right on top, its weight a comforting presence, a solid promise of truth, like a shield. My lawyer Sarah had called the night before, her voice confident, reassuring, "We've got a strong case, Alara, stick to the facts, be yourself," and her words had resonated deep inside me, calming the jitters just a bit, As I walked into the courthouse, the grand, imposing building seemed to hum with silent anticipation, its marble floors gleaming under the fluorescent lights, its high ceilings echoing with the footsteps of countless others, all seeking justice, or trying to avoid it, like a really big stage, honestly. David and Mr. Peterson were already there, seated at their table, looking supremely confident, almost smug, I noticed. David wore a crisp suit, his hair perfectly coiffed, a confident smirk playing on his lips, like he was already savoring his victory, totally oblivious to what was coming, Mr. Peterson, as always, was all business, his expression a mask of professional resolve, but I could still see that flicker of triumph in his eyes, that same almost invisible smirk I'd seen in my office, which just fueled my quiet fury. When I walked in, carrying my unassuming envelope, their eyes barely registered me, they just dismissed me, probably thinking I was just some defeated woman, coming to accept my fate, totally underestimating me completely. They didn't even bother to look up, just continued their hushed conversation, probably about how easily they were going to win, how quickly they'd walk away with everything. Sarah met me at our table, offering a warm, reassuring smile, and she squeezed my arm gently, a silent gesture of support that meant the world to me. "Ready?" she whispered, her eyes serious, a tiny spark of excitement in them, like she knew something big was about to happen too. I took a deep breath and whispered back, "As I'll ever be, Sarah," my voice a little tight, but steady, ready for whatever they threw at me. The judge, a stern-looking woman with kind eyes behind her glasses, entered the room, and everyone rose, then settled back into their seats as she called the court to order, a formal, serious voice filling the room, setting the stage, Mr. Peterson began his opening statement, his voice booming with confidence, painting a picture of David as a hard-working, honest man, betrayed by a manipulative, financially reckless wife, me, of course. He detailed the alleged financial mismanagement, the emotional distress, the fabricated accusations, all to justify that outrageous $1.2 million claim, a performance worthy of an actor, honestly. He presented their evidence, a carefully curated selection of documents designed to make me look bad, to confuse the narrative, to twist the truth, and he did it with such conviction, it was truly sickening to witness. David beside him, just sat there smug nodding, playing the part of the innocent victim, a total charade honestly. Then, it was our turn. Sarah stood up calm and composed, and began her cross-examination, systematically dismantling Mr. Peterson's flimsy claims, point by painstaking point, her voice clear and precise like a surgeon you know. She highlighted the inconsistencies, questioned the validity of their documents, poked holes in their narrative, until Mr. Peterson began to squirm, just a little, you could see it. The atmosphere in the courtroom started to shift, from confident arrogance on their side to a subtle growing unease, like a cold draft entering the room you know. David's smug look began to falter, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then a hint of worry, as he realized their carefully constructed story was beginning to crack, just slightly like thin ice. "And now, Your Honor," Sarah announced, her voice rising slightly, clear and strong, "the defense would like to present evidence of a different nature, evidence that paints a very different picture of Mr. Vance's financial activities and indeed his character." That was my cue. I stood up slowly, deliberately, and walked towards the witness stand, holding that envelope, my secret weapon, out in front of me, not dramatically, just calmly, you know, feeling the eyes of everyone in the room on me. David's face, which had been pale with worry, suddenly drained of all color, his eyes wide, fixed on the envelope, his jaw dropping, just slightly, like he'd seen a ghost honestly. Mr. Peterson, for the first time, looked genuinely surprised, his carefully composed expression cracking, a sudden panicked realization dawning in his eyes, a moment of pure, unadulterated fear you know. They froze completely, utterly frozen, their confident smiles vanished, replaced by shock, by total disbelief, by the dawning horror of what that envelope might contain, the truth it might reveal. "Your Honor," I began, my voice clear and steady, surprising even myself, "this envelope contains irrefutable evidence of Mr. Vance's extensive financial fraud, involving offshore accounts, shell companies, and systematic asset concealment, all designed to evade tax obligations and to defraud our marital estate." I handed the envelope to Sarah, who then presented it to the judge, a stack of documents thick with transaction records, bank statements from foreign institutions, and Evelyn's detailed investigative report, all laid out clearly, undeniably. The judge's eyes, previously impassive, widened as she leafed through the pages, her expression shifting from judicial neutrality to genuine shock, then a look of deep concern, almost anger I thought. She looked up at David, a hard, piercing stare, then at Mr. Peterson, who was now utterly speechless, his face a mask of horror, completely shattered. David just sat there frozen, his face ashen, looking utterly defeated, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him in an instant, right there in front of everyone for all to see. The entire courtroom fell silent, a palpable stillness, as the weight of the truth settled over us all, heavy and undeniable, like a crushing blow. My revenge wasn't loud or dramatic, it was quiet, precise, and utterly devastating. It was the simple unveiling of the truth, which was enough to wipe out his entire $1.2 million case, turning his calculated humiliation into his complete ruin. The judge, after a long silent moment, finally spoke, her voice grave, "Mr. Vance, Mr. Peterson, these allegations are extremely serious. Given the evidence presented, this court finds sufficient grounds to dismiss the civil suit for damages and will initiate a full investigation into Mr. Vance's financial activities." The words were like a hammer blow, absolute and final. Mr. Peterson stammered, tried to object, but it was too late, the dam had broken. David just stared blankly, a broken man, his dreams of $1.2 million, his carefully constructed lie, shattered into a million pieces. The humiliation he tried to inflict on me had now instead completely engulfed him, turning his victory into a crushing defeat, a bitter, bitter irony you know. I walked out of that courtroom, not with a feeling of glee, but with a profound sense of peace, a quiet vindication. Sarah, my lawyer, smiled at me, a real genuine smile this time. "You did it, Alara," she said, her voice full of admiration, "you truly did it." I didn't want him in jail, didn't want him totally ruined, just wanted justice, just wanted him to know the truth could not be hidden, could not be bought, could not be twisted forever, that's all. I finally felt free, truly free to start fresh, to rebuild my life, not with anger, but with an honest, clear heart, ready for whatever came next. It was a victory not just in court, but within myself, a reclamation of my own worth, my own truth, a powerful new beginning you know. What an incredible journey, right? It just shows you, Sometimes the quietest strength can be the most powerful, and the truth, well, the truth always finds a way to surface, doesn't it? If you've ever faced a moment where you had to stand up for yourself, for your truth, for what's right, even when it felt terrifying, I'd love to hear about it. Share your story in the comments below, because we're all in this together, aren't we?